All right, so today let's dive into something I know a lot of you are interested in, and that's managing diabetes through diet.
Yeah.
We found this great article from Medical News Today
Yeah.
called Diabetic Diet,
Mm-hmm.
Best Foods to Eat and Avoid with Diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
I think this will be a really interesting one to dig into.
Oh, absolutely. This is a really comprehensive piece. It covers a lot.
Oh, good.
From specific foods to, kind of like the bigger picture of how we eat, dietary patterns and stuff. I think what's great about it is it's not just telling you eat this, don't eat that. It actually kind of goes into the science behind it.
Okay, great.
Which I think is really important, especially for blood sugar regulation and things like that.
Yeah, so we'll understand not just what to eat, but why, which is great.
Exactly.
So where should we start with this?
Well, the article kind of kicks off by really emphasizing this concept of balance.
Okay.
A diabetic-friendly diet is all about achieving balance, specifically in our blood sugar levels. It's not about, restriction. It's about making choices to kind of keep those levels steady.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because it's not about denying yourself things.
Right, exactly.
But working with your body.
Exactly.
So are there specific things that they say? I know the American Diabetes Association always has guidelines and stuff. Do they mention that in the article?
Absolutely. They do say, there's no magic one-size-fits-all diet for diabetes because everyone is different.
Yeah. Okay.
But the more we know about how foods affect our blood sugar, the more empowered we are to actually make good choices. And, they do recommend things like focusing on fruits, vegetables, lean protein, cutting back on added sugar and processed foods.
Sure.
Kind of like the usual good advice.
Yeah, I think that's solid advice for pretty much everyone.
Yeah, exactly. But this is where it starts to get really interesting because they dive into specific foods and their benefits.
Okay, yeah, let's get into that.
Leafy greens, for instance.
Okay, leafy greens.
We all know they're good for us, but there's a little bit more to the story.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the secret?
Well, they are packed with antioxidants.
Right.
But, not just any antioxidants. We're talking about things like lutein and zeaxanthin. And those are particularly interesting because some studies suggest that they can protect against diabetic retinopathy.
Oh, wow.
Which is, a complication that can happen with diabetes. So it's not just this is healthy. It's this is actually targeting a specific issue.
Yeah, and it's more than just the vitamin or, the fiber content. It's these specific things that are in it.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I never knew that about leafy greens.
Yeah.
So what else is there? What are some other of the superfoods, so to speak?
Well, they talk about fatty fish, things like salmon, mackerel, sardines. Those are really important for heart health, which is obviously important for everybody.
Right, especially with diabetes, heart health.
Especially for folks with diabetes,
Goes hand in hand.
Exactly. And that's because those fish are high in omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA specifically.
Yeah.
And, those have been shown to help with blood sugar control, blood lipid levels.
Right. So it's not just avoiding bad fats, it's making sure you're getting enough good fats.
Exactly. And, for those who don't eat fish, there are plant-based sources of omega-3s as well, like seaweed.
Oh, okay.
They even talk about the Mediterranean diet a bit, which emphasizes those healthy fats from fish and plants. That whole diet has been linked to better diabetes management.
That's so interesting. So it's a whole dietary approach built around these principles.
Exactly.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay. What about citrus fruits?
Oh, citrus fruits. Yeah, we all know they're packed with vitamin C.
Right. Good for colds and stuff, but I feel like there's got to be more to the story, right?
Right. Well, they also contain flavonoids.
Okay. Flavonoids. I feel like I've heard that word, but I don't know what they are.
So they're powerful antioxidants.
Okay.
And there's some emerging research suggesting that certain types of flavonoids might actually specifically help with blood sugar regulation.
Interesting.
So it's kind of like a bonus benefit on top of the vitamin C.
Yeah, and that's, we love that, finding those things that are
right,
secret superpower inside the food.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
So citrus is good. What about yogurt? I know they mentioned yogurt in there.
Yeah, they specifically talk about probiotic yogurt.
Okay, what's special about probiotic yogurt?
So not all yogurt is made equal. What sets probiotic yogurt apart is those live and active cultures, those good bacteria that are really important for our gut health.
So it's like a double whammy. You're getting the yogurt, but you're also giving your gut some love at the same time.
Exactly. And those good bacteria can actually have a positive impact on diabetes too. They mention a study in this article where people with type 2 diabetes who were given probiotics actually saw improvements in their blood sugar and their cholesterol levels.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's a win-win.
It is, yeah.
Okay, so probiotic yogurt. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about carbs, because I know that is a big thing with diabetes. You know? They often get a bad rap.
Right.
You know, especially when it comes to diabetes.
It's like the enemy, but we need them, right?
It's essential.
So what does the article say about carbs?
Well, they emphasize that it's all about managing them carefully.
Okay.
They actually talk about the glycemic index, or GI.
Yeah.
Have you heard of that before?
I have.
Yeah, so it's basically a way of ranking foods based on how quickly they raise your blood sugar.
Okay.
So high GI foods cause those rapid spikes, which we want to avoid.
Yeah.
Low GI foods lead to a slower, more gradual rise, which is much better.
Okay, so it's not about cutting out carbs altogether.
Right. It's about making sure you're choosing the right kind of carbs.
Exactly.
Like, like brown rice versus white rice.
Yeah, they give some really good examples.
Or like, whole grain bread versus
white bread.
Exactly, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Okay, so GI, something to keep in mind. And they also they mentioned a tip for pairing foods, right?
Yeah, like pairing those high GI foods with some protein or some healthy fats.
Right, so that it's not such a fast spike.
To kind of slow it down a little bit.
Okay, that's good to know. So we've talked about good things to eat.
Right.
What about things to limit or avoid? Because I know that that's always a part of it too.
Absolutely. They do talk about foods to limit, but what I appreciate is it's not just a don't eat this list.
Yeah, because
it's a little deeper.
It's not just about, calories
right.
or, just general health. It's like specifically why those things are bad for diabetes.
Yeah, like saturated and trans fats, for example. They explain why those are particularly bad for people with diabetes.
Okay, so why are they so bad?
Well, it all comes down to insulin resistance.
Okay.
Now, for someone without diabetes, their body can usually kind of compensate for that.
Right.
But for someone with diabetes, it just makes it even harder to manage blood sugar levels.
So it's like adding an extra obstacle.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's all connected.
And I imagine that kind of ties in with the salt thing too, right?
Yes, exactly. Because high blood pressure is a common issue for people with diabetes.
Right.
And excess salt just makes things worse. So again, it's about understanding that bigger picture, how these dietary choices actually affect us.
And what about alcohol? Is it a total no-no or...
It's not completely off limits, but moderation is definitely key.
Okay.
Mixed drinks are often loaded with sugar, which can really spike blood sugar.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And alcohol can also interact with insulin medication, which could actually lead to dangerous drops in blood sugar. So it's really important to be mindful of, how much you're drinking and what you're drinking.
So it's not just the alcohol itself, it's what it's mixed with.
Right.
And also how it might interact with any medication.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, now I know they also talk about gestational diabetes.
They do get it.
Obviously a very specific...
A little bit different.
Yeah.
And it's important, during pregnancy, dietary needs become even more crucial.
Yeah, of course.
And they really emphasize working with a healthcare team to create a personalized plan.
Right. So getting that expert guidance is really important, especially during pregnancy.
Exactly. And then lastly, they suggest exploring low-carb diets as a potential strategy for managing diabetes.
Oh, interesting. Low carb. I've heard a lot about low carb diets in general, but I wasn't sure if they were appropriate for people with diabetes.
They don't present it as a one-size-fits-all solution, but they do mention things like keto, Mediterranean, paleo, even vegetarian and vegan versions.
Wow. Okay, so it's a whole range.
Yeah, there are a lot of different approaches.
Of options.
Yeah.
So it's not just about cutting carbs, it's about finding the way of eating that works for you.
Exactly. And we'll dive deeper into those in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, great.
So we've talked about a lot of different things, from specific foods to the bigger picture of dietary patterns.
Yeah.
And I think it's really cool is it all kind of ties back to this idea of managing blood sugar, right? Whether we're talking about getting enough of certain nutrients, like those omega-3s,
right,
or understanding how different types of fats can affect us, it all comes back to blood sugar.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because it can feel overwhelming sometimes.
Yeah.
When you're like, okay, what do I eat? What don't I eat?
Right.
But if you kind of keep that in mind, that, okay, the goal is to manage blood sugar.
Yeah.
It helps make those choices a little bit easier.
Exactly. Exactly.
Speaking of blood sugar, I was thinking about those leafy greens that we were talking about.
Yeah.
And how the article mentioned that their benefits might be linked to their high antioxidant content. And it made me wonder, what other foods are high in antioxidants that could be beneficial for managing diabetes?
That's a great question.
We hear about antioxidants all the time.
Yeah.
But I hadn't really thought about it in the context of diabetes specifically.
Yeah. And, antioxidants, they help fight those free radicals in our bodies.
Right.
Which can damage cells and contribute to all sorts of health problems.
So it's like having a built-in defense system.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I remember reading somewhere that oxidative stress, which is like an imbalance between antioxidants and free radicals,
Right.
might even play a role in the development of type 2 diabetes.
Yeah, there's definitely some research suggesting that connection, so it's definitely worth exploring,
Yeah.
What are those other antioxidant-rich foods that could be beneficial?
Yeah, I'm already thinking about like berries, dark chocolate,
Yes.
Yes. Turmeric, all those things
All those good things. Yeah.
that are known for their antioxidant power.
Exactly.
So that's something interesting to keep in mind. Now, I do want to get into those low-carb diet options that the article mentioned, because I think that that's something that a lot of people are curious about.
Yeah, it's a hot topic these days.
It is. So, they mentioned keto, Mediterranean, paleo,
Right.
even vegetarian and vegan versions of low-carb diets.
Yeah, so many different approaches.
So it's like a whole world of possibilities. So let's break it down a little bit. Like, what is the keto diet?
So the ketogenic diet, keto for short, is all about drastically reducing your carb intake
Okay.
and increasing your fat consumption. And the idea is to shift your body into a state of ketosis,
Right.
where it starts burning fat for fuel instead of glucose.
So it's like a complete shift
Yeah.
in how your body is functioning. And I know keto is, has been really popular for weight loss, but is there any evidence that it can help manage blood sugar levels?
There is some research exploring that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not just about weight loss. It could actually have some benefits
Okay.
for blood sugar control.
Okay, so that's something to look into.
Yeah.
For sure. Now, what about Mediterranean? Because
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, right?
It is. It's a very different approach.
Yeah.
Yeah, it focuses on healthy fats from olive oil, nuts, fish, lots of fruits, vegetables, whole grains.
Okay, so it's like a very balanced.
It's more about balance
Yeah.
and moderation than restriction.
Okay, and I imagine that that would be something that's easier to sustain.
Yeah, I
Over a
feel
long
that.
term.
It's a very enjoyable way to eat.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's good evidence to support that. It can improve blood sugar control and also reduce the risk of heart disease, which is a major concern for people with diabetes.
So it's kind of a win-win.
Exactly.
You're getting those multiple benefits.
Exactly.
Okay, now what about paleo? Because that's another one that I've heard a lot about.
So the paleo diet focuses on foods that our ancestors supposedly ate
Okay.
back in the Paleolithic era. So we're talking about meat, fish, fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds.
Okay.
And it excludes grains, dairy, processed foods.
So it's like a back to basics kind of approach.
Strictly.
Now, is there any evidence that that is helpful for diabetes?
The evidence is still somewhat limited
What?
for diabetes specifically.
Okay.
But some people do find that it helps them manage their blood sugar levels.
So again, it kind of comes down to what
Yeah.
works for you.
Exactly.
And I love that, the article talks about all these different variations
Yeah.
because it really shows that there's not just one way to do this.
Exactly. And you can even adapt these diets, to fit your dietary preferences.
Okay.
Like they mentioned vegetarian and vegan versions of low-carb diets.
Okay.
So it's really about, finding what works for you and your lifestyle.
That's great because it means that even if you have other dietary restrictions,
Yeah.
you can still find a way
Yeah.
to incorporate some of these principles.
Exactly. Exactly.
Now, before we get too carried away with all these different options,
Yeah.
I think it's important to say that before you make any drastic changes to your diet,
Absolutely.
it's really important to talk to your doctor
Yeah.
or a registered dietitian
Yes, definitely.
because they can help you assess your individual needs.
Right.
Create a plan that's safe
Yeah.
and also monitor your progress, which I think is really important.
Absolutely.
So, all this information is great,
Yeah.
but it's not a substitute
Yeah.
for that professional guidance.
Exactly.
And they can also address any concerns you might have.
Yeah.
Like, are you getting all the nutrients you need?
Exactly.
That kind of thing. So it's all about working together.
Yeah, it's a team effort, for
Yeah.
sure.
To find that plan that's going to work best for you.
Exactly.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have. It's amazing how much there is to learn about, how our food choices affect diabetes.
It is. And what I really like about this article is, we really went beyond just like, here's a list of what to eat.
Right.
We really get into like the why.
There's a science behind it.
Exactly. Like how it all works,
Yeah.
From those like superstars like leafy greens and their antioxidants
Yeah.
to the broader approaches like Mediterranean.
Yeah.
And, even those like low carb variations
Right.
and thinking about antioxidants.
So many different angles to consider.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It is. But I think the main takeaway is that knowledge is power.
Yeah.
The more we understand about how these foods affect our blood sugar and our overall health, the more empowered we are to actually take control.
Exactly. And it's not about, feeling deprived or following all these strict rules.
Right.
It's about making choices that you can actually stick with.
And that fit into your life and your preferences.
Exactly. And this is just the beginning, really.
Right.
This article has given us a lot to think about.
Yeah.
But there's always more to explore.
Yeah.
Maybe you're now interested in researching those antioxidant-rich foods even further.
Right. Yeah.
To see which ones could be particularly helpful for managing diabetes.
Or, maybe you want to dive deeper into one of those low carb diet options.
Yeah, exactly.
Keto or Mediterranean or whatever.
Absolutely.
And see if that's something that could work for you. But whatever you decide to do, I think it's important to remember,
Yeah,
you don't have to do this alone.
exactly.
There are so many resources out there.
Talk to your healthcare team,
Yeah, talk to your doctor.
a registered dietitian.
Yeah, a dietitian can be so helpful,
Absolutely.
and they can really help you personalize that plan.
Yeah, find what works for you. And there are support groups too. Oh, that's a good point, yeah.
You can connect with other people who are going through the same thing.
Yeah, it's a journey,
It is.
but it's a journey you don't have to do alone.
Exactly. And remember, even small changes can make a big difference.
That's so true.
It's not about being perfect.
Yeah.
It's just about making those consistent efforts to really prioritize your health.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to end on.
I agree.
So that's a wrap on our deep dive into diabetic-friendly foods. I hope you found it helpful and empowering, and maybe sparked some new ideas for your own journey.
I hope so too. Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and take good care of yourselves.
Thanks for listening.